Okay, good evening. Thank you for joining us on a live Late Show. We want to go through some things that are going to be perhaps difficult for those who've never watched Revelation TV before, but we have some breaking news today, and we want you to take this into account when you're looking at social media, where it seems particularly the younger people don't have a clue of the history of Israel. And it's important to understand that history because it's coloring people's viewpoint and the way in which they treat any information regarding the history of the Jewish people, particularly even the Holocaust. And we're going to be looking at things from a biblical point of view and a Christian point of view. Those who know their Bible will understand totally the history and the value of the scriptures and when they're talking about the people of Israel. Israel has made lots of mistakes in the past, historically, but God has made a covenant with them, and that covenant is an agreement between them and their God. And we're blessed if we bless them. It says in Scripture, blessed are those who bless Israel. And the opposite happens if you don't. And that's why I think it is important to understand this point. Otherwise, you'll be going against God and you'll be going against and ruining your own future as well. It is a dangerous time that we're living in, that's for sure. But the scriptures point out in prophetic terms that all the nations will come against Israel. And there's never been a time before where even the people from the West, like America and the United Kingdom, have actually are starting to wane in their support of Israel. And that fits in, sadly, very directly with the scriptures in Zechariah chapters 12 through 14, particularly 14. Tim, you were very kind to handle a lot of the things that were happening today because I had a lot to do. I'm editing a program that's got a deadline which I'm chasing at the moment. So thank you for stepping in. You got some interesting things to share. How would you like to start?
Yeah, it was quite short notice, but this news came in that the ICC was, issuing arrest warrants for, the chap on the right is, a known Hamas murderer commander who happens to be dead. So they put him on the same roster as Yoav Gallant, the former defense minister, and Bibi Netanyahu, and to show balance, I suppose, or to tar them with the same brush as this mass murderer. So anyway, I had an opportunity to interview Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, who's the former deputy mayor of Jerusalem. And Simon's interviewed her before, but she very kindly came on after a flight, I think, back from America to Jerusalem, and gave some insights. So that may be quite good to frame or maybe we start with the CBN reports.
Yes,
just so people know what the news is.
And the International Criminal Court issued this particular warrant to arrest Netanyahu and Gallant. And the other one they can't arrest because he's already dead.
But there's definitely trumped up charges, and it's according to their worldview where Israel is demonized. So obviously if they're demonized, then the leaders of Israel are demons.
Yeah,
that's the way they do it.
Let's have a look at this video as well. It was only recorded just a little while ago. Thank you for doing that, Tim.
So this is CBN first,
The warrants accuse Netanyahu and Gallant of war crimes and crimes against humanity over the war in Gaza and Hamas for the October 7th attacks that triggered Israel's offensive. The ICC decision would put Netanyahu and Gallant at risk of arrest if they traveled to certain countries. Back in May, when the ICC threatened arrest warrants, Netanyahu called it a moral outrage of historic proportions. The warrants come as Israel fights wars on its southern border with Hamas and Hezbollah in Lebanon. On Wednesday, U.S. negotiator Amos Hochstein concluded talks with Lebanon's Speaker of the Parliament.
If we made progress, I would go to Israel and make those additional discussions there based on the conversations here and see what we can do.
A major sticking point is Hezbollah's demand that Israel can't respond to violations by the terror group.
للعدو الإسرائيلي.
It is not allowed for Israel to violate and kill and enter whenever it wants.
Israel's new foreign minister says they must have that right.
We will need to keep the freedom of to act if there will be violations.
Zahar says Israel must be able to keep Hezbollah from ever again becoming a huge threat.
We will have to enforce that they won't be able to build again their force in Lebanon. They won't be able to bring again ammunition, missiles.
While Hochstein would not discuss details of the agreement, Middle East analyst Lee Smith tells CBN News it would underwrite the Lebanese army that's been infiltrated by Hezbollah.
We're talking about an additional $400 million for the Lebanese armed forces, in addition to the hundreds of millions that we have now decided to give them yearly. What we're doing is we're paying a Hezbollah asset.
Smith says the deal favors Hezbollah.
It not only protects an Iranian proxy, the chief Iranian proxy, Hezbollah, what it also does is it also it stiffs the American taxpayer. We call it funding for Lebanon. It's not funding for Lebanon. It's funding for Hezbollah.
At the UN Wednesday, the U.S. vetoed a Security Council resolution demanding an immediate, unconditional, and permanent ceasefire in Gaza.
We made clear throughout negotiations we could not support an unconditional ceasefire that failed to release the hostages.
Israel points out Hamas can easily end the war.
If Hamas were to release the hostages and surrender their weapons, not one more shot would need to be fired.
In the U.S. Senate, an effort by progressives to end sales of offensive weapons to Israel went down to a solid defeat. Opponents said it would send the wrong signal.
This signal will be seen by the enemies of Israel and the enemies of peace as if they just stick with it, they will win.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
The main heading for tonight, really, scripture-wise, is from Isaiah, and it's very appropriate, I think, for tonight as well. Woe to those who call evil good as good. Woe to those people who call evil as good, okay? And when we're looking at Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, you know, if you call them good, and obviously then you're looking at Israel as being bad, you've got it totally wrong. Okay, so you've got to be warned. You have been warned in the scriptures here as well.
Another take on that is people who say, well, the ICC is good. The ICC is good. International Criminal Court. Oh, that must be good because it's international.
Yeah,
look at all the countries supporting it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not necessarily right even if you got the majority on your side, and that's the danger. They think, oh, you know, it's got the consensus of world opinion. No, because world opinion can be evil.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do is we do want to invite you to take part in tonight, obviously live at revelationtv.com, emails, and the SMS is on your screen as well. And what we're going to do is going to go to the interview that Tim just did, and this is with Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, who was the former deputy mayor of Jerusalem. Have a look at this and comment on it, please.
In the light of the arrest warrants that the ICC, the International Criminal Court, so-called, has issued, arrest warrants for Netanyahu and Gallant for their arrest over alleged war crimes, I am delighted to be joined by Fleur Hassan-Nahoum. And Fleur, you're known on this channel. You've already been on other programs, so thank you so much for taking time out to join us.
Thank you for inviting me.
It's been announced this afternoon that the ICC have issued arrest warrants, and it sounds very, very official, but could we first just look at what is the basis of these alleged war crimes?
It's all based on lies. There's two main lies. One is that Israel is committing war crimes by intentionally starving the civilian population. All it takes is somebody to come to one of our few borders where almost 1 million tons of humanitarian aid has gone through in the last year to understand that it's a complete slander, saying that Israel is intentionally creating a situation of starvation in Gaza. What is really going on is that Israel is doing exactly what it needs to do according to international law, which is facilitating the entry of humanitarian aid. And what's happening is that as soon as the aid crosses into Gaza, the Hamas terrorists are stealing at gunpoint from international organizations the aid and selling them in the open market.
So they appear to be saying that, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu and the former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant are sort of personally culpable. That and of course they, you know, it doesn't appear as though there's a kind of innocent until proven guilty. They're making a judgment that they bear criminal responsibility as a civilian superior. So it's pretty pointed language, and as you say, they're accused of perpetrating the war crime of starvation as a method of war, and also crimes against humanity of murder, persecution, and other inhumane acts. Is there any acknowledgement of the fact that there's like a two-way conflict going on?
Well, forget the two-way conflict. Who attacked who? On the 7th of October, we were brutally attacked by genocidal terrorists who want to kill all the Jews, not just in Israel, but around the world. That is in their charter. And they've not just done that, but they've said that given the opportunity, they will do it again and again. So what the ICC is basically saying is that the Jewish state has absolutely no right of self-defense. That's what they're saying. And by saying that, that's an anti-Semitic claim. It's saying everybody in the world, if they get attacked by an aggressor, can defend itself. That's the most basic right, to defend your people. What they're saying is the Jewish state can't defend their people. That's what they're saying.
And they've put in, a charge to kind of show some appearance of balance, another arrest warrant for a chap called DF, if I pronounce that correctly. Now, what's all that about? Is that just for, window dressing?
Well, it gets even more ridiculous than that. Mohammed Def was the number 2, is the military commander of Hamas, and we killed him 6 months ago. So they've put out an arrest warrant for a guy who's dead.
Okay, so that's quite convenient because they probably won't be able to find him or arrest him.
Well, Hamas already admitted that we killed him, as we should. It's like killing Hitler. And so it's absolutely absurd. This is a kangaroo court, and shame on the UK for not condemning it, because what that means is that if the UK ever gets attacked, they have no right to self-defense according to the precedent that this ruling sets.
And could we just unpack a little what is the legitimacy of this so-called international court, and what is their jurisdiction? And their name has popped up, in the past, and you just wonder, is it a kangaroo court, or what exactly is their basis for legitimacy? Do they just receive money from the mafia, or what's it all about?
So they get $200 million a year, and in 22 years, they've only brought in six indictments, mainly to African leaders. Why this is troubling is because Israel is the first democratic country that abides by the rule of law and has its own internal law and order scrutiny to ever be indicted personally to the Prime Minister and the Defense Minister by this court. Just to mention that the US, they started an investigation on the US for the same type of thing in Afghanistan. And as soon as Trump's last administration got in, and they threatened to sanction the judges and the advisors personally, all of a sudden they dropped the investigation. So you can see that this is a kangaroo court, a biased court, which is supported by a very biased UN that doesn't represent the majority of the world population, where they don't have jurisdiction over Israel. And it's an overreach of an anti-Semitic panel of judges led by Karim Khan, who is also at the moment under scrutiny for sexual harassment.
What are the implications of this? Is it just showboating, or could it mean, as some of the mainstream media are saying this afternoon, that Yoav Gallant and Netanyahu will have this hanging over their heads for the rest of their lives? And could they be subject to, as it were, being detained if they travel to countries where the ICC, gets its tentacles?
Yes, absolutely. It could mean that they can't come to Britain because Britain will issue a warrant for their arrest as soon as they land. It's a ridiculous situation. It's like saying that Churchill should have been sanctioned and arrested around the world for getting rid of Hitler. It's as saying that George W. Bush and Osama bin Laden and Barack Obama for killing Osama bin Laden should be arrested when they land in any signatory country. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And could we just dig a little more into, is it like an agent of the United Nations?
Yes.
So the UN Secretary General wasn't exactly sort of impartial at the outbreak of this war when there were 1,200 who were massacred, and I don't know how many hundred taken hostage. He wasn't exactly sympathetic to Israel. He suggested that there was, grounds for Hamas's attack.
Well, not only that, he took him 3 months to condemn sexual crimes and said there was no proof. Where in the world are there sexual crimes in war and you have to actually show the proof? The UN is a bias organization which is whitewashing dictatorships and anti-Semites under the guise of a democracy within the UN. It's ridiculous that countries like the United States and Britain have the same status as countries like Sudan and the Islamic Republic of Iran.
So this prosecutor, Karim Khan, is the one you've mentioned, who's there are some investigations currently underway. Apparently he also sought warrants for, Ismail Haniyeh and Sinwar, but he's obviously missed his chance there.
Well, we did the job for him because they're now dead.
While we're on the subject of the UN and their agencies, what's happening with UNRWA?
Well, UNRWA, again, is a biased organization that perpetuates Palestinian victimhood and the complete delusion that one day Israel won't exist and they would be so-called liberating their lands. That is UNRWA, and it's supported by the entire world, including Britain. The Conservative Party in the last government actually suspended funding to UNRWA, which is basically seeped with terrorists. 15 members of UNRWA were part of the massacre. One member of UNRWA was caught harboring a hostage. So they are completely poisoned, completely terrorist infiltrated UN organization. And what is the UN doing? Seeking for the asylum, or seeking for some type of immunity for their workers instead of condemning the terrorists that have infiltrated the UN organization.
So, see, what's a mystery to punters like me is if there was a basis for the UK and Germany and others to withdraw funding, has that basis suddenly disappeared for them to renew funding to UNRWA? It just seems slightly inconsistent. And then just following on from that, what do you think, I note, by the way, that the White House has rejected this arrest warrant by the looks of it, if I'm reading correctly the newswire.
Yes, they have.
And now, could Trump go further and start to investigate and issue arrest warrants for, leaders of UNRWA and the International Criminal Court?
Well, what he could do is sanction the advisors, the judges, the lawyers of the International Criminal Court so that they can't come into the US, or they're persona non grata, or they're criminals when they get to the US. And honestly, we need that right now because countries that believe in liberal Judeo-Christian values have to stick together. These organizations have been taken over by Islamists and Islamist sympathizers, because the fact that you have an arrest warrant for the democratically elected Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and you don't have an arrest warrant for the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran that is killing women willy-nilly for showing a strand of hair, or Bashar Assad from Syria, who killed 500,000 of his own people, many of them through chemical attack, is obviously ridiculous.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Just finally, on a sort of semi-positive note, I've noted in your current activities, you're a special envoy for innovation, and you've been involved in the post-Abraham Accords, fostering business ties. That's really interesting, because that was one of the achievements of Donald Trump with Jared Kushner, opening up, peaceful, agreements with Israel's Arab neighbors. Can you see that once Hamas and Hezbollah and, God willing, this wicked regime in Iran have been moved to the margins, can you see that opportunities again for opening up and widening the Abraham Accords?
Absolutely. We have an opportunity now, and people don't seem to understand that the biggest threat to humanity and to the values that we all hold dear is Islamic fundamentalism being funded by the Islamic Republic of Iran, by Qatar. That is the problem, not just of Israel, but of the entire world. And if Donald Trump comes back into government and makes everyone understand that it's the end of that regime of terror in the Islamic Republic of Iran, my prediction is that within a year, we will have a peace accord with Saudi Arabia. Once that is done, everything will fall like dominoes, and we can look forward to a better and safer world.
That's absolutely wonderful. Fleur Hassan-Nahoum, Special Envoy for Innovation, bless you, and thank you so much for joining The Late Show.
Bless you all for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think it's a privilege and an honor to be someone and an organization that would actually get behind the true Israel and to really set things straight. And I can remember when I met Netanyahu in 1999 that that's exactly what he said to me when I asked, what can we do to help as Christians? And we'll look at that a little bit later, just to remind some of you what went on at that particular time, but also pretty much set the stage for me to actually start Revelation TV was exactly what Netanyahu spoke to me about, establishing the truth about Israel and coming against the web of lies. One of the things, Tim, by the way, you did a great job there, well done, but with Fleur, she was making a few things that I didn't know about. For example, the International Criminal Court gets $200 million a year. I mean, that's an incredible amount of money.
What do they do with it?
Exactly, and then for them to get it wrong, having paid all of that, is just ridiculous. We'll be looking at some of the reactions from world leaders today, etc., and those who think they're world leaders, by the way.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Jeremy Corbyn, for example, we'll be looking at what they've all been saying in regards to this demand for arrest, really, of Netanyahu and others as well. I would actually say, Tim, that she did mention that shame on the UK for not condemning this ICC ruling.
Yeah, we've had a couple of emails on that. I'm outraged, Jason writes, that the UK government has supported the ICC arrest warrant. Keir Starmer has made a critical mistake, and then Tracy says the UK is quickly declining under Keir Starmer's leadership. We need to keep praying for the UK.
Yeah, or for him to go. That might be easier. Yeah, so and let's have a look also, again, what we were talking about. Woe to those who call evil as good, because there's an Isaiah scripture which really says when you start to pervert justice and you turn it around and twist it to the extent that the ICC has actually done in this particular point, wanting to arrest Netanyahu, is absolutely absurd. I mean,
they're all lining. All these countries are lining up in support of the ICC, even after they've heard the Israeli President Herzog and the statement he made. I don't know whether we can read that. It's on the screen. I think it can come up on the screen. I don't know whether I can get to it. But he says this is a dark day for justice, a dark day for humanity, taken in bad faith. The outrageous decision that the ICC has turned universal justice into a universal laughingstock. It makes a mockery of the sacrifice of those who fight for justice, from the Allied victory over the Nazis till today. It ignores the plight of the 101 Israeli hostages. That's why we're still wearing our yellow badges, the ribbon. Held in brutal captivity by Hamas in Gaza. It ignores Hamas's cynical use of its own people as human shields. It ignores the basic fact that Israel was barbarically attacked and has the duty and right to defend its people. It ignores the fact that Israel is a vibrant democracy, acting under international humanitarian law and going to great lengths to provide for the humanitarian needs of the civilian population. It goes on. Indeed, the decision has chosen the side of terror and evil over democracy. They call evil good. And freedom, and turned the very system of justice into a human shield for Hamas's crimes against humanity. Cynical exploitation of the international legal institutions reminds us once again of the need for true moral clarity in the face of an Iranian empire of evil that seeks to destabilize our region and the world and destroy the very institutions of the free world.
And I like the way that she drew a parallel between Churchill and Hitler, and Obama with Osama bin Laden, you know, because shouldn't they have been arrested as well? In that sense, if you're going to look to arrest or make Israel pay the piper according to the ICC.
It's absurd. They want the destruction of the Jewish state. They want the elimination of the Jews, and and the person. Another analogy I'd say is that Hitler is running the ICC. Far from,
yes,
he's the only one who wants Churchill arrested.
Yeah, of course. And I wonder who wants Netanyahu arrested.
Yeah.
And of course, she mentions UNRWA. Well, our viewers will be very familiar that UNRWA is an organization that is almost paying the piper, for those and Hamas to actually exist in the first place. Yeah. And also the way in which the funds go to educate the children, the Palestinian children, to actually hate Israel and to want to grow up to actually take the lives of innocent Israelis or Jews anywhere they find them.
A little hint, Howard, that it's dodgy, this ruling, is another comment that's come out on Twitter from none other than Jeremy Corbyn. Do you remember him?
I do,
Former leader
unfortunately.
of the Labour Party. So his comment really shows you which side the ICC is on. The ICC's arrest warrants are long overdue. The Prime Minister and Foreign Secretary must immediately endorse this decision. Sounds as though they have. Yeah. That is the bare minimum. Will the UK government now finally honour its international obligations to prevent genocide and end all arms sales to Israel? Isn't it wicked to use that term, genocide?
And the United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer, as the spokesperson, said that the British government respects the independence of the International Criminal Court, but refused to say whether Netanyahu should be or would be arrested if he entered the United Kingdom. Adding that Israel has the right to defend itself. It's a little bit, wishy-washy, this, isn't it?
Clever.
And that there is no moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas.
Most shocking, Howard, is the Netherlands, where they've just had that pogrom, where they've been hunting down, and the police did virtually nothing to stop it. So the Dutch Foreign Minister Casper Veldkamp declared that the Netherlands implements the Rome Statute 100%, becoming the first country to say that it is prepared to act upon the ICC arrest warrants.
Yeah, do you know
they had the worst record, Howard, in the war per capita for shopping the Jews to the concentration camps.
Well, it's starting all over again. You can see it. You go through this list from France, Canada, Italy, European Union, Jordan, South Africa, Argentina, Austria, Hungary. There's a list here of people, and I'm sure without reading them all as individuals to you, we can see the pattern that there is definitely enmity between them and Israel, and no recognition really of Israel having the right to defend itself.
Just one that I've picked out is the European Union so-called foreign policy chief, you know, as though they're an empire or something stupid like that. Anyway, he argues that the ICC's decision was not political. And then we had Suella Braverman, who said exactly the opposite. She was our former, was she the Attorney General for a while? She was. This is a political decision. So Borrelli, whatever his name is saying, oh, it's not political. She's saying it is a political decision dressed up as a legal one. It can only bring the ICC into dispute. Israel is fighting for survival against Hamas terrorists following the October 7th attacks.
Yeah. I'd like to read from the Hebrew scriptures from the book of Zechariah, chapter 14, just to really get a better understanding what God, if you like, is actually saying. The Lord Yahweh is actually saying about the situation that's going to happen in the future, and it's heading that way, I would say, right now as we're speaking. Behold, the day is coming, chapter 14, verse 1. Behold, the day is coming for the Lord when the spoil taken from you will be divided among you. For I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city will be captured, the houses plundered, the women ravished, etc., etc. But it then goes on to say, then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations that come against Israel. And when he fights on the day of battle, he will. And in that day, his feet, this is talking now about the Messiah, when that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem to the east, and the mountain, the valley will split in the middle from east to west, and a very large valley will occur, so that half of the mountain will move towards the north and the other half towards the south. But it goes on to say in verse 6, and in that day when all the nations come against Israel, there will be no light. The luminaries will dwindle, for it will be a unique day which is known to the Lord only. Neither the day or the night, but will come about in the evening time when there will be light. But it goes on to say in verses 12, it actually describes something which I think would fit in very well with like a nuclear explosion in that force. It says in verse 12, now there will be a plague in which the Lord will strike all the peoples who have gone to war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet, and their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongue will rot in their mouth. And it will come about on this day that it goes on to say just more and more of the description of that, what's going to happen. But the Jewish people will survive as a nation, and woe betide those who come against her. I mean, this isn't the only scripture that actually will show that God is to stand for the nation of Israel and the Jewish people wherever they are. And yes, it talks about them being called back into the land which they were robbed of, going all the way back to the times of the Romans as well in 70 AD. But en masse, they're going to come back and re-establish. And then God steps in.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So be warned.
Yeah. Now, just before we go to another very important video about Gen Z, and by the way, the fact that these Gen Z kids who are watching TikTok are saying that the Holocaust didn't happen, this is the clip.
But that was against the law.
With this ICCE propaganda.
Yeah.
They're getting all this propaganda, so why wouldn't they believe it?
But it wasn't so long ago that was, there was, who was the gentleman, I call him a gentleman in loose terms, that came and was the Holocaust denier. It was in the 90s.
David Irving,
yeah,
historian.
That's it. Yeah. And he was jailed for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
it's illegal in Austria. And by the way, we mentioned all the nations that have been completely wicked in their endorsement of the ICC, but Argentina, Austria and Hungary have been very clear. And Austria, just consider Austria supplied 80% of the most fanatic SS officers. 80% came from Austria, the Waffen-SS. But their foreign minister has called the ICC arrest warrant incomprehensible and ludicrous, which is a good way to put it. But shall we watch this video by Zach Sage Fox, where he takes a Holocaust survivor to meet some of these Gen Zers who are saying the Holocaust never happened?
Yeah, let's have a look at it. Watch this.
Studies say that 1/5 of Gen Zers deny the Holocaust, and over half think that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide. So I've brought a Holocaust survivor to spread the truth. Do you think Holocaust happened?
Nope. No, I gotta see it to believe it. There's a lot of gray area in that debate.
What's the gray area you've heard?
It's about the whole Jew thing. Yeah.
What have you heard? The Jews might have made it up, or?
Yeah.
So yeah, you think it might not have happened?
Yeah.
You think what's happening in Gaza, you would call it a genocide?
I would call it a genocide, yes.
Yes, I believe so.
I think so as well.
I actually have a surprise for you.
Oh.
This is a good friend of mine, Sammy. He is a Holocaust survivor.
Let me put it in a different way that we can understand. If you would be silent for every victim of the Holocaust, 6 million minutes, you would be silent for 11.5 years.
Wow.
6 million Jews, that's almost as many people in New York City.
That's a lot of people.
You see all the people here? Let's assume that you are here in the camp. The commander would come and be in the middle. Just point, right, left. One group of people would be murdered right away. The second one would become slaves. In the labor camp, people died of starvation. They were worked to death, beaten to death to follow instructions, and at the same time they were used as a shooting target. I was subjected to medical experiments. You look at me right now, but you would never know that I'm in constant pain every single second of my life. At the same time, my life was saved by a German woman.
Wow. These guys think that what's happening in Gaza is a genocide comparable to the Holocaust. Do you agree with that?
No, we should not make comparisons. The IDF is the only military in the world that is putting its own people at risk to save civilians.
I was kind of just thinking of like murdering like innocent like people that like had nothing to do with that.
Talking to you guys, I think it might just be that the word genocide is now thrown around so loosely to Gen Z on TikTok and in the news that you guys conflate war casualties with genocide.
Yeah.
Right now, in Israel proper, there are 2.5 million Arabs. Do you know how many Jews are in the whole Arab countries? 4,000. Where is the genocide?
Jews were kicked out and exterminated from all the Arab countries, but yet somehow we're the genociders from having one little dot in the Middle East, the size of New Jersey.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
You agree, it's good we got rid of the Nazis. You agree?
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Okay, so in order to do that, to bomb all of the concentration camps and Nazi infrastructure, several 100,000 innocent German civilians, not soldiers, died in that war. Was that a genocide, or are those terrible war casualties a product of us trying to free the world from terrorism?
Those are war casualties, but I don't believe that the Palestinian lives that are being lost are war casualties. I believe that is a genocide.
And you think you at 17 years old know more about genocide than someone who survived the biggest genocide in human history?
I feel like I have to educate myself.
Does the media have a role in you believing what you believe?
Yeah, a lot around TikTok.
Wow, so that's where you got a lot of your conspiracies from.
Yes, sir.
Wait, do you think that's why Gen Z is so much denial? Is TikTok a big part of it?
Yeah.
Wow.
IDF is the only military in the world that is opening up routes for the Palestinians to leave before
That's
they
not
bomb.
true. They just banned the UN from doing work there.
UNRWA had a ton of Hamas operatives.
Hamas are the murderers that murdered so many Israelis.
What about IDF? What about what the IDF did too? IDF is part of the problem.
Sammy was in the IDF, by the way, just so you know. He found refugee in Israel.
And you are part of the problem.
Yeah, really? You read the Hamas charter. Number one goal is to kill Jews everywhere around the world, not Israelis, Jews specifically. That's pretty genocidal.
I do agree with that.
Do you know that if Israel really wanted to commit genocide, in 2 days they can flatten it?
We're having, I think, pretty fair dialogue.
Free Palestine, please.
All right, from Hamas. All right, I wouldn't say that was very respectful. You just walked away from a Holocaust survivor.
Quite revealing, isn't it? They're just subject, they're fodder for propaganda. The chap, we just have to thank him again. His name is Sage Fox. He referenced Gordon's book on Hamas.
Yes.
And the Hamas charter is there in Gordon's book, which is on page 91 by the looks of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's very clear, makes it very clear. Yeah. And Fleur actually mentions it as well.
Exactly. And the ICC court, they did. I don't think they mentioned it. Shall I read some emails?
Yes.
This is from Jean. This is outrageous that the ICC have issued these arrest warrants to Netanyahu and Gallant. As you said, all this began on October 7th last year with Hamas brutally attacking Israel and the massacre they issued on the Israeli people. We really are at a time where there is no truth and wrong is being portrayed as right. The UK should have no part in this action, arresting Netanyahu and Gallant. Paul and Ruth say, God of Israel sees the false accusations towards Israel. God bless Israel. Enough said. We stand with Israel 100%. The ICC is a company of individuals who have invented a way to support anti-Western democracy. Britain should not support the ICC, created by the UN. Where did all these organisations come from? Well, they appear, strangely enough, when you start wodging a lot of money around.
Yes, they soon surface, don't they?
Yeah.
They can smell the money, 200 million a year.
Yeah. Alwyn says, we definitely have to stand with Israel as we see the times of their troubles. We need to keep praying. And then Eddie says, the Jew baiter, David Lammy, must be salivating at the mere thought of having the right to arrest the leader of Israel.
He would, wouldn't it? Okay, one of the things that I want to show you next is the interview that I did, and I know many of you would have seen it, but just showing part of the interview. And it really was something that the Lord orchestrated, because just to give you a little bit of background, the time we were in Israel, we spent a month there interviewing different people. The Lord said to me to go, and I went, and I had a cameraman with me who works for the BBC, and he's obviously was a friend of mine. And he said, when we were on the airplane, he said, who are we going to interview? I said, I haven't got a clue. He said, what? He said, we in the BBC have everything all organised. In fact, we come over to wherever we're going to do the interview. We go there in advance, and so we know what we're doing. Then we go back and we start to film the interviews. I said, all I've got is the Lord said, go and go now. So this is where we're going. The amount of people and the people that we got to interview, it was so spot on. The timing was perfect. And when I went to go and try and get in with the press conference that was going to be held with Netanyahu at the particular event, the man who was organising it said, I'm sorry, it's all full, you can't go in. And I just said, if God had wanted me to interview Netanyahu, it would have happened. And he said, you're in. And I was thinking it was no chance at all. But anyway, Netanyahu, I know it was going to be such an important interview for me to get the right questions to ask Netanyahu. And the first one is not included here, but it was a throwaway line, really. And I did ask the Lord to give me a really powerful question so that I knew that it would have long-lasting and it would be eventful and would have fulfillment. And this is what led to me establishing Revelation TV as a channel, and it's to establish truth about Israel and to come against the web of lies which the world and the Gen Z and TikTok and all of the other organizations get wrong.
I just wanted to say that we acknowledge and deeply regret that what Christians have done over the last 2,000 years. And but even in light of that, would you comment on the role that Christians are playing today in a positive way?
Well, I think what's happening here is a very positive thing. I think the work that Willem has been doing and all of you are doing in supporting the state of Israel, the rebirth of the Jewish people in their land is the most positive declamation of faith in our common heritage that Christians and Jews can do together. So I think it's very important.
In order to continue in this positive role, which I'm very eager to see and participate in myself personally, what would you say to encourage us to look to the future and perhaps in a way that we can continue to help? Is there a new way perhaps?
Well, I think it's spreading the truth about Israel as opposed to the many falsehoods that are leveled against it. You spoke about the evils of the last 2,000 years. Those evils were made possible because of defamation, because of vilification, because of the lies that were spread about the Jewish people. And always, physical brutality was preceded by a web of lies. I think that working the other way, building a bastion of truth about Israel and the Jewish people and the Jewish state is the greatest corrective of that. And fortunately today we have a Jewish state, and we have many Jewish and many non-Jewish friends that can fight the battle of truth, which I believe is the most important battle for the future of the state of Israel.
Thank you very much. I agree with you entirely with that.
I appreciate it.
Well, what Netanyahu said to me some 20 years ago, establish the truth about Israel and combat the web of lies, has emboldened me to do just that alongside my small Gideon's army team. And by the grace and favour of God, may Revelation TV continue to do just that.
Well, that's why we're here, to build and be part of building that bastion of truth. And the Revelation TV viewers are always in on, you know, putting another brick into this bastion. And what actually Kathleen wrote from Northern Ireland before this was played, and she just said regarding that interview I did with Fleur from Israel. She said, what a courageous lady. Once again, lies, 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 all the devil's lies. Churches should be speaking out, standing up and standing with Israel. God bless you for the truth. Alan says, it's good that the USA has stood up to the ruling, and even Argentina, who are members of the ICC, they're standing up to them. We have an anonymous, the Jews helped the black people hugely during apartheid. I lived there for nearly 40 years. Thank you for the huge, great work you are doing in these critical times. Because South Africa is one of these people who are joining the accusers.
I think they were the main ones, weren't they?
Oh,
initially?
yeah, exactly. I mean, they brought a case against Israel. Just to put up to, it's evil. They say it's a significant step towards justice for crimes against humanity and war crimes in Palestine. You keep saying it. That's what Goebbels said. If you repeat a lie enough times, people will start to believe it. And Adolf Eichmann, the Austrian, said that, you know, if the lie is big enough,
but as you say, if you keep repeating it, and this is what's happening in most of the news networks across the world, let alone this country, coming against Israel all the time in a derogatory way, undermining them as well in every way, and no mention about what actually happened on October the 7th, 2023, as if it didn't happen at all, and the hideous way in which they came against innocent, I mean really innocent people, a baby, and a baby in the womb as well, and all the horrific things that people lost their lives. And the bragging that went on, where that young boy was bragging that he killed an Israeli girl or woman. Terrible. I killed her with my own hands. I killed 7 of them. I killed them all. And they're all getting, excited about
this
it.
This ICC thing is almost more sinister than Hamas, if you can say such a thing, because they've cooked this up. They've played hand in glove with Hamas to say, right, you do that deed, Israel will respond. Don't worry, we'll come in with the legal, the lawfare, and we'll wipe them off the map, because we'll get the whole world to come against them.
Yeah, which will tie in nicely with the scripture in Zechariah 14.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Our government ought to condemn the anti-Semitic ICC edicts and stand up for Israel. This is from Sheena. The Bible says Israel is the apple of God's eye. We need a clean sweep of the anti-Semitic people in our politicians. God will be the judge when he splits the Mount of Olives into 2. Yeah. And Deborah, Debs writes, I'm late joining the show tonight and just wondered if you have talked about this yet. Well, in fact, you're talking about the Israeli PM's arrest warrant. I'll read it out, Deb. Is it okay to support Israel and yet not believe the government of Israel is being as fair and honourable as they could be? At the end of the day, while the world is kicking off in support of the ordinary Palestinians, what are they doing? Something to let the children, women and old and sick out. Why is that? Don't follow your argument, except that that's exactly what Israel is doing. They're giving them warning so there can be safe corridors, so they can't
and providing the food, which is not being acknowledged by the general public or the press.
And then Deb goes on, this is what I do not understand. Why people don't get it. If we sent boats to pick them up, the terrorists would kill their own to prevent it. Or would they? With cameras watching in 2024, would they really? Absolutely. They're filming their massacre. They're happy for cameras to be there. That's the whole point.
Absolutely, because
Hollywood.
yeah. But this has been the pattern as well, for the way in which groups like Hamas and those at Hezbollah, it's a pack of lies that goes on behind, and the way they actually show the people actually being shot and killed that are not, it's not accurate, that they're blaming Israel for snipers taking out the 14-year-old, which I've got footage of, which shows that the girl gets up and walks away. But it was on the news, what was the station? Al Jazeera.
Just one final paragraph. I do know Hamas would cut off my head and your heads too. And Hamas was empowered to build the tunnels and threaten Israel in a new way. But I also know there were warnings of October the 7th and not enough security. Was it allowed by the Israeli government? I'm wondering, rather than allowed by God. I think that people let their guard down. We all do. We all do. I went to the Patrick Henry camp after there was, I don't know whether you remember, in the 80s, there was terrible bombings of an American camp in Germany. I was there for a fairground thing. A few months later, there's no security at all. I went into the Senate building a year after 9/11 with a massive great tripod. It looked like a bazooka, and I was just waved in. No one even checked who I was. So that's what happens. People let their guard down.
And it's very unusual for Israel to have fallen short on their security and not knowing what's going on. Because you know how clever they are with regards to technology and listening in to even know where these Hamas leaders are. If they've got that pinpoint accuracy of being able to take them out, they should have known. But so obviously, if you like, they were blinded to what was happening so that it would happen. I know it's not very nice, but when prophecies have to be fulfilled, they will be fulfilled regardless of how or how clever or how, if you like, acknowledged that we know what's going on at the time. It is a
bit of an enigma. Brian says if Keir Starmer doesn't come out and condemn the ICC for those arrests, he needs to go. And the sooner the better. I mean, it is quite frightening now how evil the world has become. These people that are at the top. God is watching, revenge is mine, saith the Lord.
Woe to those who call evil as good. That's the Isaiah scripture. We started with that, and if you've just joined us, that's where we're at, and that's what seems to be happening. It's even in amongst the young ones, Gen Z or Generation Z, as we would say in the UK, just before I get picked up on that. But they're being educated not through looking at the history at all, but just by being what's being said, all the chitter-chatter, which is leading to and pointing to the destruction of Israel and the Jewish people. They've had it for thousands of years, Tim, and there's just seems to be no end to this problem. But you know what? We have an enemy, and in the devil. Satan is the one who wants to take out the Jews because he doesn't like anything that God arranges. The Lord God, Yahweh, actually wants it and arranged for the Jewish people to
and they're
be
the
his
heart
chosen people.
of God's salvation story.
Yeah.
They're the lights,
yeah,
and they're the covenant and the glory of the Lord. Now, Sherelle, if I've pronounced that correctly, Israel has every right to defend herself. Netanyahu's brother was killed in the Entebbe raid. He did not go out and do what Hamas did despite this. For example, Islam is a religion that is trying to rule the world. These type of rulings are putting putty into the hands of these extremists. Israel under Netanyahu has made mistakes, obviously, as any leader, but Israel has every right to defend herself. And Jane writes, "Oh, how I wish all this was being broadcast to the world." Talking about our program. Yeah. I was born in 1943, so before the end of World War II, we bombed Dresden to smithereens in order to bring about an end to the carnage. It was terrible, but contributed to the eventual surrender of the Nazi genocide of the Jewish people. I don't remember us being brought to court or forced to bow to anyone else and repent for our actions then. Benjamin Netanyahu is ridding their land and the world of Hamas and Hezbollah. This finishing the work that even Joshua did not do to bring about God's command to rid Old Testament Israel of the high places and Asherah poles, the Amalekites and all the other kites who had no right to be there. War tribunals and courts for Bibi and his warlord, ? God forbid.
There's a statement that you have to read, Tim, I think, or something.
Okay.
It's been just queued. Yeah.
Okay, let's read that. So this is from the Prime Minister's office in Israel. The anti-Semitic decision of the International Criminal Court is a modern Dreyfus trial and will end the same way. Israel utterly rejects the false and absurd charges of the International Criminal Court, a biased and discriminatory political body. No war is more just than the war Israel has been waging in Gaza since October the 7th, 2023. When the Hamas terrorist organization launched a murderous assault and perpetrated the largest massacre against the Jewish people since the Holocaust. The decision to issue an arrest warrant against the Prime Minister was made by a corrupt chief prosecutor who is trying to save himself from sexual harassment accusations and biased judges who are motivated by anti-Semitic hatred of Israel. The ICC prosecutor lied when he told American senators that he would take no action until he had visited Israel and heard its side. Well, they didn't bother.
The Israeli government website is where you would find the rest of that statement. So if you wanted to see every single word of it, you can read that for yourself.
Simon writes, isn't it amazing the BBC is employing 67 Hamas reporters? I didn't know that.
It's almost, what can you say? Because the BBC has done nothing to really support Israel in any way, never has done either for some reason or other. But you know what? Let it be. Let them all come out of the woodwork. Let them all come against Israel, because the judgment day will actually take them all out. Sadly, they will pay the price. Unless they wake up. But it was something for me when I read the scriptures, particularly Romans chapters 11, to explain to me very clearly that God had not rejected his people Israel. In fact, they're very important, and they're allowing us right now to come to know the living God, who is the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob. And we will be blessed because of it. Thank you very much to you, Tim, and also to our crew, Nathan, and for you as well for being with us today. God bless you, and be informed.